And let the record show that 6 board members are still here with Mrs. Brill, had to leave. And I'll give everybody a moment to refresh your screens. And we probably should have done the pledge at the very beginning this afternoon instead of now, but this time please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no minutes to approve, and we have 2 items that were added to the agenda, P1 and P2. Dr. Vosa, any items that have been withdrawn?
No items pulled or withdrawn.
Okay. Are there any items from the consent that the board would like to pull? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Mrs. Whitfield. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. That moves us into any comments or superintendent's comments.
No
comments.
No
Sir. Comments. Thank you, Mrs. McQuinn, because your comments were perfect in time for that one. So thank you very much. And at this time, we'll move into new business. Dr. Vosa.
Yes, our first item, sir, is BRD2, proclamation procedures. I recommend the board discuss and take needed action to establish procedures which for posthumous proclamations, how they will be handled.
There a motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Mr. Barbieri. Any discussion? Mrs. Whitfield?
I had a question about it. I was just wondering, should we include in the procedures if a family is here? I know that last week we couldn't quite figure out when to bring the family up, if that should be just itemized when the family comes up, and then when is it read? Is it read after they come up to the front? Are we recognizing them, or do we read it and then they come? I don't know. It just felt like it wasn't quite. So if we're going to write up procedures, I kind of thought maybe it should all be written in there on how we make it very consistent. That was the question I had. Or maybe it's not needed.
Ms. Rico?
As far as board guidance on that issue, I think as important to make it smooth, it probably doesn't need to be in the policy, and that choreography can just be done by staff.
And sometimes what happens, like last time, if you've got some folks who are coming who are elderly, we don't want them to sit for an hour or two, the chair has the opportunity with the flexibility just to say, can we move the item forward?
And I personally would like for us to do it where we take it out of order and do it early. So we could just go ahead and schedule it that way.
No, I meant the
That's what I
part
feel.
about when we get them to walk up to the front as a part of it. So not bringing it out of order, that's fine.
Oh.
I just meant as a part when we, but we can do that through communications, that's fine.
Very good. Any other questions? Dr. Robinson?
Okay, maybe I'm just missing it, but I don't see the process outlined. I see a template. So am I missing it? Okay, so we're to discuss it now? Because I thought that legal counsel was going to propose a process. Okay, well, so, all right, this is what I would imagine is that that upon, the passing of a person that we think be recognized, that a board member would notify the superintendent, and I guess maybe explain why. I think that we're going to need to have conversation about what we think the criteria is, because this will happen between board meetings.
Yeah, that's what we'll need. We'll need from you. So is it a person who's impacted children? Is it a longtime employee? Is it a pastor or a leader in the faith community that has impacted children some way?
So may I just kind of frame a little bit of what I think the board discussion might want to focus on, and that would be the criteria for certain, and then we can work toward a policy, because I do think that we're recommending that a policy be moved forward into development to cover this. So if you all wanted to explore that, we can go from there.
Dr. Robinson?
Okay, so I think that that it needs to be framed as someone who has had a positive impact on the life of children in Palm Beach County, and that they don't have to have been a school board employee. Now that's my personal, and I think that we should be able to say what that is. And I guess, as I'm imagining this, it would give some authority to the board chair to say okay, right? And then we could ratify it later, because this would be between board meetings. So I might suggest someone that you might not think deserves such an honor, right? But
Mr. Barbieri?
I'm concerned with having this policy in the first place, because if we have a teacher that's been teaching for 40 years and dies, she's made an impact on children. So, and typically we have lots of employees that die between meetings. So are we going to select which teacher was more positively impacting children than another teacher, or which principal did a better job over her career than another? I mean, I think we're stepping into a hornet's nest here, because we're going to favor some over others. I don't know. I mean, we need to give a lot of thought to how we set these parameters, because, Dr. Robinson, what you just said, I mean, I think many of our teachers that die while they're working for us, that have spent 30, 40 years here, would be, you know, I mean, how do we differentiate between them?
Right.
So we're gonna have dozens and dozens of proclamations to read at every monthly meeting with all
Well,
these.
some proclamations can be put on consent, and really the whole point of this, let's say, for example, there's a beloved minister who passes away, and we want to provide an opportunity for a proclamation to be delivered to his or her congregation. We do so, and then it goes on the consent agenda. You wouldn't have to pull all of them. I mean, I've seen other municipalities and governments do that. But to your point, there's got to be some criteria, because Mr. Shawzo's done a great job, the board has, in reading out the individual who passed away if we know that they've passed away. But they don't get a proclamation, right? So that's really what the discussion needs to be about. The board had brought this to our attention, and we need to hear more from you about what you mean by that.
Yeah, Ms. Whitfield?
All right, I completely understand what you're saying, Mr. Barbieri, as well, and that is a concern of mine, but I was thinking, you know, just as a thought, I think, higher levels of government, they get a certain number of them per member that they let them do, so maybe 6 a year or something that you get to bring forward. I don't know if I want to limit us, but I was just bringing it forward as an idea. Either a proclamation or something like that, do you know? No, it's like but with something we could look into if you want to see if we could limit us.
You know, it seems to me that this is pretty complicated. I'm not sure we're going to come up with enough tonight, but there were some things that I think staff needs to have a chance to look at this, because I really hadn't thought about how far-reaching this is, and it really is a difficult issue. So I don't know if maybe what we want to do is ask Ms. Rico.
Thank you. Just because this has been mulled around for quite some time, may I go ahead and offer a drafted policy? I will submit it, and you all can have it on the agenda to discuss a sort of proposed one. Then you can beat that up, and we'll just invent it. That would be one starting point. I'm
Dr.
happy
Robinson?
to do that.
So I have no objection to that, but really what I would like to see is how other people do it. So I have no clue, for example, if Broward, Orange, or anybody else does such proclamations, right? But also I know, you know, like the county commission does and cities do. So I would like to see really like a matrix of how they do it. And if I had not heard this, you know, set number or limit per board member, if that's what some people do, fine. I would just like to see the variables that people consider in their process, so that we can more intelligently deliberate upon ours.
Mrs. McQuinn and Mrs. Andrews.
I would like some kind of process policy, because last week there was some confusion with the proclamation, and we need something that prevents us from having that kind of confusion.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. And we've been trying to get this for a long time, so I really want us to take our time and get it correct. But I do know that sometimes I may know someone that you don't know that's done something outstanding, you know, that has actually impacted education. And I really want to be able to do that based on my experience, which might not be your experience, so I don't want any limit on something. Certainly we won't abuse something like this. I remember when we started doing the memorials at the school board meetings a few years back. So this is just an addition to, sometimes I'm attending funerals for people, and I would like, if I'm sitting there and I'm representing the school board, I need that proclamation to give it to the family. I feel a little foolish sitting there just giving a card when somebody may have served 30 years for us, or something big could have happened to them and caused them to lose their life. I really want to be able to give the family something. So I think I want to be able to have enough areas to look at so that I can make sure that we respect any and everybody that we're actually going to do this for, and I don't want it to be limited to a number.
Okay, I think everybody agrees. Give Ms. Rico an opportunity to digest all of this and put something together. So we'll call a question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next item, P1, and before we do those, I have to do the good cause statement. On P1, good cause exists to allow the employees to begin work in their new positions as soon as possible. And then P2, the out-of-field agreements, the out-of-field and out-of-compliance list of teachers must be submitted to the board prior to date certain for FTE. And this will be a finance impact on the schools district as it's a compliance requirement by the state and is monitored during auditing, therefore creating good cause to add this item. Dr. Vosa, P1.
I recommend the board approve the personnel agenda as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. McQuinn, second by Mrs. Woodfield. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed, motion carries 6-0. P2.
I recommend the board approve the attached list of out-of-field, out-of-compliance teachers for Survey 3 for fiscal year 18.
Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mr. Barbieri. Only one real quick comment from me. I still have a concern about the number of hours and how we administer the ELL training requirements to be in compliance, and I hope that we continue addressing that issue, because if you look at our list, a lot of the teachers that we have are out of field, are out of compliance on ESOL. So if no other questions, we'll call a question. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. That concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
No, you have one more item, sir, don't we?
No, we didn't vote on the consent agenda.
Didn't? Oh. Mrs. Bass said we didn't vote on the consent agenda. Anybody want to pull anything else? We jumped really quick. It's been a long afternoon. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? So we need to adjourn this meeting and then move into our final meeting of the afternoon, which is our leasing corp meeting. So is there a motion to adjourn the special meeting? Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. This time we'll